Hey guys, so previously I made some videos about list building also, and this time I want to focus a bit on one aspect of list building, which is to include mobility in your list. So as you might have seen on my channel, you have, well, a couple of different armies, and I'll just discuss a couple of the armies that I play and the choices that I make in the list building. So first off, it's going to be my Warriors of the Dark Gods army. So Warriors of the Dark Gods are usually an army that fields a lot of big blocks of very expensive troops that can just chop their way through the enemy lines. And in my list, I actually have fewer elements of just this bold playstyle than a lot of other people have. So the last iteration of the list is the one that I actually like most, which is the list that you can see. So the only very hitty elements are the core warriors and the Forsworn actually. I do have some warrior knights, but I didn't have any points for the lances, so I'm still trying to find a way to get these. But with Pride and the Champion, they hold their ground quite well. Of course, I have the Exalted Herald and the Sorcerer on the Chariot, but in terms of Warriors of the Dark Gods, these are not the most hitty units that you can take. So how did I get to this list then? So you can see I have Helmor, and I think the Helmor really helps the army as a whole, especially armies that are a bit slower in general. The combination of the Helmor with the two Chimeras is also really nice to really ramp up your mobility to levels that other armies can only be jealous of in combination with quite hard-hitting units. So it's a bit of a MSU kind of list, and I think that this mobility really enables you to make plays that you otherwise couldn't make. So for example, if I'm in a tricky situation and my opponent is cornering me and he has managed to isolate a Chimera, it can still go through a portal of the Helmor and get away like that. So that's a little bit extreme, but you get the idea. Yeah, I feel like if you play warriors in a way that you are going to outmaneuver your opponent, gonna go for the matchups like where you charge in the flanks or the rears of your enemies rather than full frontal, then you can actually achieve a lot with warriors. It's a combination of a sorcerer on a dark chariot that can go through the portals, the Exalted Herald to gather very strong magic phase, also with Ledger of Souls to give you the Veil tokens that you need. I think it's an army that you can play very well as a sort of evasive, hard-hitting combat army with magic support. And I think if you play it in this way rather than in the way where you just move forward basically and hope that your unit is stronger than your opponent, then you might still encounter opponents that have units that are stronger than yours, or that can selectively charge one of your units and break through your lines. So it becomes more like a rock paper scissors game if you don't factor in mobility of your units and don't factor in the fact that you might just want to be able to run away from fights, even though it's obviously warriors. Yeah, so that's the first. Then the next one is going to be my Vampire Covenant army list. So this is the army list that I've been recently trying out, and I'm also going to use it for the Dutch league. So there's going to be a league that we do over a couple of months, where you play just against people in your neighborhood, and it's kind of a knockout tournament. So there's 32 players that we start with. We have a pool first to have 2 or 3 games per person before people actually start to drop out. And after that, it's just a death match basically. So you play a match, if you lose, you drop out of the tournament, and the winner gets to go to the next round. So why this list, or how does mobility in this list work out? So this vampire count is a von Karstein general, so he has plus 6 inch on his marching bubble. He is on a zombie dragon to get another 6 inches, so he has a 24-inch marching bubble. And this means that in this army you can actually include choices that you would normally not really want to include unless you also include Dark Coach to get the 6-inch march bubble around that. This enables you to field units like 5 Baronites with a champion, the Spectral Hunters and the Winged Reapers. And most special choice in this list, I would say, in terms of Damage output for points invested is the Winged Reapers, and they stay always a bit expensive for the damage output that they provide. Because these 515 points, they get you like 12 wounds at Resilience 5. That is expensive. So if you compare it to a unit of Beauregard of like 25 or 30, I think you can get 400 or 500 points. The Beauregard are way more sturdy than these Winged Reapers, and the damage output of the Beauregard is also comparable to that of the Winged Reapers. But the Winged Reapers, they are light troops and they march 12, and the Beauregard only march 8, so that's a big difference. And the footprint of the Beauregard is also a little bit more clumsy, at least, than one of the Reapers, as you have light troops and you can fly anywhere. But it only works in a list where you have the playing field open for you to make use of it. In this list, it kind of works because I have just the skeletons that are going to group together, and the rest of the list is actually highly mobile, or has a very small footprint like the Phantomhost. And then, yeah, basically you just, once again, just evade your opponent where you want to evade him, and focus on your opponent where you want to. So ideally you would have a bit of a higher advance on the Winged Reapers rather than 6, because then for charges it's going to be easier. But I think this list would work way better with Winged Reapers instead of the Beauregard. But maybe you have another opinion, and then you can let me know in the comments. And then the last list I want to talk about is my Dread Elf list. So this list is actually not that mobile at all. But then you can approach mobility also in another way, and that is, well, I talked before about redundancy in lists also. So you don't need a lot of mobility if you have redundancy of choices all over the field. So in this list I play the Dread Legionnaires, bit of a Death Star. Well, it's a cheap Death Star actually. They have the banner of the Relentless Companies to still get them where they want to be. It's supported by Witchcraft magic, so I do have probably Raven's Wing and the Will-o'-the-Wisp for the random movement. And that's also a spell you can cast on your own unit, so that greatly improves your lateral mobility in the list. So for example, you are playing against a very evasive list. If you cast your Will-o'-the-Wisp with 3d6 on the Dread Legionnaires in the middle of the field, then suddenly your opponent cannot approach you from any side of the unit, instead of just from the front. And then the other element you see is that I field 4x10 Dread Judges with the champion. So this is the type of redundancy I was referring to earlier. If you just flood the field with a unit choice and just spread them out over the field, then your opponent can't really hide from them anyway. So the downside is that you will have units that probably are going to be sitting around doing nothing. But on the other hand, it's also units that your opponent is not getting the points from then. So as long as they're scoring units, I think this is still a decent option. And as long as they're either just going to be steadfast for a long time, just as sturdy anvils, or if they have a very high damage output, such as the Dread Judges. Dread Judge units, they are really interesting because they have a very high agility, so they strike first or at the same agility probably as your opponent. And that makes it a pain for your opponent to clean them up, especially also with the multiple wounds too against standard size models, such as a lot of characters. Yeah, so that's going to be it for now. It was a bit of a short one, but well, next week it's going to be longer again. See you!